So no Jerry Jones and no Micah Parsons spotted at Cowboys practice in Oxnard. You see stuff like that, and you're like, okay, could they possibly be somewhere to hammer this problem out? And, who knows? Obviously, maybe you do. What is the crux of it? Like, what is the crux of it that Jerry thought they had a handshake agreement that Micah Parsons has essentially reneged on? I might be oversimplifying it, and he's one of those old school guys that you don't do that to him. And Micah is one of those new kids, if you will, on the block who are like, yeah, I did speak to you, but I'm being disrespected by being made to go through all of this, and I'm not apologizing for that. I just had my agent get involved, and I don't care who he is or what the Cowboys are. I don't want to play there anymore, and I actually will not. And that, am I simplifying everything, or is that basically it, Tom?
That is a significant part of it. And you saw it in Micah Parsons' lengthy statement he put out on social media 1 week ago today, requesting a trade. And he mentioned in there, I no longer want to be a part of the Cowboys, but also I no longer want to be held to contract talks that occurred without my agent present. That's referring to what Jerry Jones thought he had in terms of an agreement based upon conversations between Micah and Jerry 6 months ago, 5-6 months ago. So when you're talking about negotiations and how they play out in the NFL, there's only a couple of teams in recent NFL history that have kind of defied the way that this is supposed to work, the way that this is required to work. You had Bill Belichick would make a habit of bringing in players and negotiating directly with them without the agent present. And you had Jerry Jones, who there have been a number of occasions where, everybody knows part of Jerry's MO is whether if you're hitting a snag in contract negotiations, you're trying to get ahead of it, Jerry will invite somebody up to his office and basically try to hammer it out face to face. So while it seemed like that was what took place with Micah, there was never an involvement of Micah's agent. And of course, Jerry made the famous comment now that, well, I don't know what his agent's name is. It's David Mulugheta, who has negotiated over $1 billion in contracts this year. He is not a difficult guy to get a hold of. And I'm not going to sit here and do a David Mulugheta infomercial for you right now, but it's not as if you have like a long history of him being difficult to work with or not being able to get deals done. Not only have the Cowboys never just submitted a contract proposal in writing, that's what negotiations are. It's exchanging of bargaining proposals. Not only have they never sent in writing a contract proposal, they've never even had a conversation. They've never even had contract talks with Micah's agent. That's not how this is supposed to work, and it makes it hard to believe that the Cowboys and Jerry Jones can continue to say, well, fans should have any sleep over this. Maybe not the idea that, this is their truth. It's been a week since he requested a trade, and as of last night, there still hadn't been one conversation other than on multiple occasions, Micah's agent saying, hey, we're ready when you are for business. There's been nothing in terms of actually trying to hammer out a contract. Here we are, 27 days from Cowboys-Eagles in the kickoff game? They're nowhere right now. And so without reading too much into what Mike is feeling, you certainly see in that statement his frustration of, why does it have to be like this? I'm not just going to sit here and have no talks and you're not talking to my agent. Until that happens, a deal is not going to get done. And at the same time, whatever trade interest is out there, the Cowboys don't seem interested at this stage in trading Micah Parsons, which makes some sense because trading in August is not when you're going to maximize the value, even if you were wanting to move the player.
Let's talk a little bit about a third rail subject matter, which is, Parsons has somehow worn out his welcome with people in that building over the years. The previous coaching staff might tell you some stories, right? And, Tank Lawrence might tell you some stories now from Seattle. And that Jerry is kind of fighting a fight on that regard as well. Is there any truth to that? Is there something going behind the scenes here, Tom?
There have been, and we reported back on Super Bowl Sunday, there were internal conversations going back to last year about, potentially should they trade Micah Parsons. And that was as much because of the top nature of the roster. And it really wise to sign a guy for, at the time, 35 or 40 or now $45 million per year. Well, you already got Dak and CD making the money that they're making. But if Jerry Jones were concerned about personal dynamics, locker room dynamics, coachability, the fact that Micah kind of does his own thing in the spring and isn't a full-time participant in OTAs, if you had those concerns, you wouldn't have been negotiating, or whatever you want to call it, the handshake deal that you had back in the spring. Jerry Jones was willing to make a commitment to Micah Parsons. I've seen some of the things out there recently that it was, $200 million guaranteed and all that. And that, as far as I know, is not true. I mean, the highest guarantee, I believe, for a defensive player ever is $123 million. And Jerry's not just going to cut a check for an extra 77 out of the goodness of his heart. Mm-hmm. But he was clearly willing to make a significant commitment to Micah Parsons. That deal ultimately, did not get done for the reasons that we just discussed. But if you were concerned and, hey, we got to get this guy out of here, you wouldn't even be willing to have that conversation. And again, if they had come to Micah or David Mulugeta back before the draft and said, hey, we're going to move you, they would have been good with it. Hey, go and, all right, you're going to move on. We'll go play someplace else. We'll get a big check. You guys get all the draft capital. Well, now it's August, and while Micah has requested a trade, from the Cowboys' perspective, never say never, Rich, because we saw this happen with Khalil Mack some years ago, and it came to a head right about this time. They couldn't agree on a deal, and John Gruden ended up trading him away and getting some draft capital for him. But when you're talking about not getting draft capital even in this year and not having any way to replace Micah Parsons, and by the way, Matt Eberflus has come in building his plan in part around, hey, we can use Micah in all these different ways, and this is how our scheme is built. It would really put, you would in essence be signaling, I don't want to overstate this, Rich, but you would in essence be signaling this is a rebuilding type year. If you trade Micah Parsons away right now for future draft capital, you are basically saying, hey, 2025, we're going to do our best. We're probably not going to win. We're going to start building this thing again in 26 and 27. And that just doesn't seem like something that 82, 83-year-old Jerry Jones would have a really high level of interest in.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.